All right, so we're hopping into this new series called The You Effect. And the whole idea behind this series is that you actually have an effect and influence on people probably a lot more than you think. Right? We sometimes feel insignificant or like we don't matter or what we're doing is too small, but you never know how God is going to use you in any circumstance to make a difference in somebody's life. And I'm really excited today because I've asked my friend Hannah Johnston to come and share this talk with you. And Hannah is a college student. She is studying to be a student pastor. And so this is new for her. She's never done a video like this, but I'm really excited to see what she has to say and what she has to share. And then I'll jump back in at the end and we'll close this thing out and be good to go.
I have this friend named Paige who is always so positive and so joyful, and you never see her without a smile on her face, and she's so good at making people smile and laugh. Now Paige is a part of this encouragement committee for my sorority, where she gets coffee with somebody new every week to see how she can best spiritually encourage them and how she can be in prayer for them. Now Paige isn't in any leadership position in my sorority. She's not the chaplain or the vice president or the president, but everybody that I've talked to about her tells me how great of a listener she is, how she gives such great spiritual advice, and how intentional she is with them. Paige has a huge effect on the people around her, and she does it in the smallest ways that she probably doesn't even realize how big of an impact she has in people's lives. Now, I want you to think of your most fun friend, or somebody that has an impact in your life, and keep them in mind. I'm guessing you probably have a friend like Paige, someone that has a huge effect on the people around them, whether they know it or not. Maybe they're genuinely fun to be around and everybody wants to be around them, or they're so nice they make you want to be a nicer person. Or maybe they work so hard that they make people around them work harder. Or maybe it's the opposite. Maybe you know somebody that's so mean and you always feel on edge around them, or they're always so upset and bring the mood down. Whether that person has a good effect or a not so good effect, anyone who has a significant effect on the people around them might not even know it. Now in this series for the next few weeks, we're going to be talking about the you effect, how you have an effect on people and situations around you. In other words, how you influence. For some of you, maybe your influence is obvious. Maybe you hold a leadership position at your school, or you're the captain of a sports team. Maybe you're the friend people always go to because they know you're such a great listener and give great advice. For others of you, you say, I don't affect or impact anybody. Maybe you're thinking, I'm not like your friend Paige. I don't influence anybody at all. Either way, it's totally normal. And either way, the truth is, it's possible that we have a great effect on people and we don't even realize it, or what could happen because of our effect. Let's talk. We're going to be looking at someone who used what they had to affect others, even though they didn't realize the great effect that they had. It was recorded in one of the Gospels, which are the 4 books of the New Testament that tells us about Jesus' life. Today we're going to read a story recorded by John, who's one of Jesus' closest followers. In fact, whenever Jesus was on the cross, one of the last things he did was ask John to take care of his mother after he died. So we can read these words knowing that they were written by an eyewitness who Jesus trusted. So when Jesus traveled around in his 3 years of ministry, crowds almost always followed. It could have been because they wanted healing for something, or maybe they were just curious about the things that he was teaching. Whatever the reason, Jesus had a lot of influence and always had people around him. So we're going to be reading in John chapter 6, verses 1 through 14. It says, Sometime after this, Jesus crossed to the far shore of the Sea of Galilee, that is the Sea of Tiberias. And a great crowd of people followed him, because they saw the signs he had performed by healing the sick. When Jesus went up on a mountainside and sat down with his disciples, the Jewish Passover festival was near. When Jesus looked up and saw a great crowd coming toward him, he said to Philip, Where shall we buy bread for these people to eat? He asked this only to test him, for he had already had in mind what he was going to do. Now I want you to picture this. A large crowd gathered to see the great miracle worker Jesus. And what does he do? He asked his disciple Philip what he should do. And I'm sure in this moment Philip was thinking, Aren't you the great miracle worker? Why are you asking me what we should do? Verse 7 says, Philip answered him, It would take more than half a year's wages to buy enough bread for each one to have a bite. In other words, you've got to be kidding me. If we're going to feed all these people, we better find somebody with a lot of money to make that happen. Verse 8 says, Another one of his disciples, Andrew, Simon Peter's brother, spoke up. Here's a boy with 5 small barley loaves and 2 small fish, But how far will they go among so many? This is where Jesus went to work. Jesus said, "Have the people sit down." There was plenty of grass in that place, and they sat down. About 5,000 men were there. Jesus then took the loaves, gave thanks, and distributed to those who were seated as much as they wanted. He did the same with the fish. When they all had had enough to eat, he asked his disciples, "Gather the pieces that are left over, let nothing be wasted." So they gathered them and filled the 12 baskets with the pieces of 5 barley loaves left over by those who had eaten. After the people saw the sign Jesus performed, they began to say, "Surely this is the prophet who is to come into the world." Jesus, knowing they had intended to come and make him king by force, withdrew again to a mountainside by himself. Now, I don't know about you, but I have so many questions after reading this story. Like, where did they get the baskets from? And how did they have enough food to feed 5,000 people with only 5 loaves and 2 fish? But the most important question we could ask about this passage is who has the biggest influence and why? It's easy to say that Jesus had a lot of influence. After this account, a large crowd of people started calling him a prophet because of the miracle that they had witnessed. And then there's the disciples, who was impacted just by associating with Jesus. But the real superstar of the story may not be as evident or who you think. In this story, it was the boy with the 5 loaves and 2 fish. Now the truth is, it wasn't the amount of what he had that made him influential and made a difference, but it was his willingness to give all he had that made him influential. I bet this kid and everybody that knew him never thought that he could influence like this. He wasn't well known or in a position of leadership. He wasn't super athletic or popular or academic, but none of that matters. Jesus wasn't looking for any of that, but the thing that mattered was the boy brought all he had and it was enough. Because ultimately it's the power of Jesus and what he was capable of doing through someone who's willing to be used and offer what he had. When affecting the world around you, it's about being willing to show up and offer what you have to God for him to use you. But before you can do that, you have to realize that you have more of an effect than you think. Imagine if that little boy listening to Jesus teach believed he had no effect on the situation. There would be no story to tell. 5,000 people wouldn't have been fed. And in the same way, when we feel like we don't have anything to bring to the table, like we don't have the potential to affect anything, there's so many opportunities that we miss out on where the Lord could use us. The way that we see influence needs to change. Having an impact isn't about doing more or having more or knowing more people. It's really about just being willing to do something with what you have, no matter how big or small it is. Now, I want you to choose to believe that you have an effect on your friend group, on your teammates, your section of the band, your siblings, and your classmates. Just imagine what God could do with the you effect in the world around you. Even if it feels impossible, God can use your influence in a huge way, just as Jesus did with the little boy's 5 loaves and 2 fish. Now, as you think about this, I want you to think about these few steps. So first, identify the who. Who are the people around you that you can influence? Identify the need. What do the people around you need? Is it encouragement, someone to listen, or maybe somebody to help them with their homework? Identify what you can do and do it. Now I want you to think about a person in your life who has affected you in a positive way. What was it about them that allowed them to have that impact on you, and how did they impact your life for good? In the same way that others have an effect on you, you have the same ability to impact others. This is why we have small groups, because the people you're around have an impact on you, and you have an impact on them, maybe even more than you think. Ultimately, God is the only one who has the power to change people, and all you have to do is show up, offer what you have, and let him use you.
You see, here's what's so cool about Hannah sharing what she just shared with us, is the fact that she felt like she really wasn't making a difference either. And she was scared to do this video. She thought, man, I've never done this before. And yet she did a great job sharing God's truth with us. And you can do the same thing in your life. It doesn't matter how big or how small or how insignificant you may think it is, or you may think you are. But God can use us in the smallest of ways or in the biggest of ways, in ways that we can never imagine. So we just have to be open to let God use us, to be available and let Jesus do whatever he needs to do so that we can make an impact in the lives of others. I love you guys, and go continue just being an influence and making a positive effect on the lives of other people.